Greetings, 6th grade parents and students. Mr. Korn here. This video is going to be about distance on the coordinate plane. How do you find the distance between 2 points on a coordinate plane? This skill becomes relevant because many problems relate the coordinate plane to a map, and they use this graph here, this coordinate plane, to represent a map. And on the map, they locate various buildings or landmarks or special areas of the map, and they ask students to find the distance between those places on the map. So in order to do so, students must know how to find the distance between points on a coordinate plane. Okay? First thing we have to review, though, is absolute value. Absolute value is a review term from last unit, and what absolute value means is simply the distance of a number from 0. How far is a number away from 0? This symbol here, so this set of vertical lines that's around each of these numbers, is the absolute value symbol. So when you see a number that's surrounded by these 2 vertical lines, it simply is asking for the absolute value of the number on the inside. So this one is asking for the absolute value of 5, which simply is asking again for the distance of that number from 0. How far is 5 from 0? So let's find out. The absolute value of 5. In other words, how far is 5 from 0? Well, this is a positive 5, so first we must locate 5 on the number line. And here it is, positive 5. Then we simply count. How far, or how many spaces, is the number 5 from 0? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We can say that the number 5 is 5 spaces from 0, so therefore the absolute value of 5 is 5. Let's suppose we have this number here, negative 6. What is the absolute value of negative 6? That's what these 2 vertical lines mean, absolute value. In other words, how far is negative 6 from 0? Well, first we must locate negative 6 on the number line. There it is. Then we must count. How far is negative 6 from 0? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. So negative 6, even though it's on the negative side, is still just 6 spaces away from 0. So we can say that the absolute value of negative 6 is 6 spaces away. Next one will be negative 3. What is the absolute value of negative 3? How far is negative 3 from 0? Well, negative 3 is on the negative side of 0, but regardless, it's still 1, 2, 3 spaces away from 0. So even though we're looking for the absolute value of a negative number, our distance is always expressed in a positive value. Because even though negative 3 and negative 6 are on the negative side of 0 on the number line, they're still just 6 and 3 respectively away from 0. So when we talk about absolute value, our distance from the 0 is always expressed in positive terms. So if you're being asked for the absolute value of a positive number, it'll be the same thing. If you're being asked for the absolute value of a negative number, it'll just be that number without the negative sign. Okay? So that's the quick review on absolute value. Now let's get on to the distance. How do you find the distance between points on the coordinate plane? So suppose we have these 2 points. Negative 3 and 2, positive 5 and positive 2. How far are these 2 points away from each other? First, we must remember that when we have a point, an ordered pair, we have 2 numbers in every ordered pair. An x number, which relates to the x-axis, which is the side-to-side axis number line. And then we have a y number, which represents an up and down movement on the graph. So we have to put these two numbers on the graph, -3 and +2. So first, I got to put them on the number line. -3 means back 3, and then +2 means up 2. 1, 2. So here's my point, -3, +2. The second point is 5 on the x, the side to side, and then 2 on the y. Start at 0, 5 on the x, +2 on the y. So here are our 2 points. How do we find the distance between them? Well, a couple ways you can do this. If you are fortunate enough to have a graph or a coordinate plane in front of you, you can simply plot the points, like I did, on the coordinate plane, and then you can count. You can count the spaces between them. 1 space, 2 spaces, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can say that these 2 points have a distance of 8 spaces away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you can simply plot and draw the points on the coordinate plane and then count the spaces between them. And you'll get again 8 units. Now, these units could represent blocks, like in a city. So you could say 8 blocks if it's a city map and it represents blocks. Or it could be miles, and each space could represent a mile. Okay, in which case you'd count by miles. So that changes between each problem. Okay? But let's say you did not have a coordinate plane. Let's say you did not have this graph to plot these points on, but you still needed to find the distance. Well, there's a way to do that, and it's a bit tricky. So if you need to rewatch this video, you can do that. And also, textbook page 402. Okay, textbook page 402 will help you with these steps. Also, the students have some resources in their notebook that can help find the distance between points. And here's what you do. Okay, I'm actually going to put these points back up there real quick. So -3, +2, and then 5, +2. The first thing that's important to notice is that since their y value is the same, that shows that both of the points are going to be side by side, cutting through the +2 on the y-axis. Okay? Now here's our distance part. How far apart are they? Okay? Here's what we do. First, what we do when we look at our points, we look at the points that are different. And in this case, it's our x coordinates that are different. The y coordinates are both 2. But the x coordinates are different. One's -3 and one's +5. So what we do is, if we don't have this graph to graph it on and count, here's what you do. You first look for the points that are different. Here they are. In this problem, it's the x points that are different. Then what you do is you take the absolute value of each number. So first you take the absolute value of -3, and then you take the absolute value of 5. So once again, first step to finding the distance without using the graph is to look at which points are different. Is it the x points that are different, or is it the y points that are different? Well, in this case, both the y's are 2, and it's the x points that differ. So first we take the absolute value of both those points, their distances from 0. Okay, this one is 1, 2, 3 away from 0. So the absolute value of -3 is +3. It's just 3. And the other one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces from 0. The absolute value of 5 is 5. Then we have to look. If we have one negative and one positive, 1 and 1, one of these is negative, one of these is positive. Actually, it wouldn't matter which one's negative or which one's positive. If one is negative and the other's positive, then we would add the absolute values together. You'll see in the next example what would happen if they were either both negative or both positive. In this one, though, we look at the points that are different. It's the x points that are different. And then we look, well, this one, we have one negative and one positive. Find the absolute value of each number, and we add. And we can find that 3 plus 5 actually does give us 8. The same distance we got when we counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Let's try another. This gets a little tricky for students. It takes some practice, and it takes some remembering. But let's try another. Students love having a graph. So, it's great to have a graph and all, but there are questions out there that will ask you to do this without a graph. So here's another set of points. Okay? Here's 2 points. Since I do have a graph here, we can put them on the graph, and then we can count. So, -4, +2. Let's start. -4. Then +2. There's my -4, then up 2. There's my point. Next point is -4, -5. So this one is also at -4, but instead of going up 2 this time, we're going down to -5. Okay? So here we have our 2 points. -4, +2, first one. -4, -5, the second one. So of course we can simply count these to find the distance. And let's say each block is worth a mile, so we're counting in miles. 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles, 7 miles. So we know that the distance is 7 miles, but what if we didn't have the graph? Let's see. First, we have to look for the points that are different. Are the x points the ones that are different, or are the y points the ones that are different? In this example, the x points are the same. Both of them are -4. So we need to focus on the y's, because this y is a 2 and this y is a -5. So we focus on these 2 numbers. What this is really doing is just simply finding this space, the difference between them. So here's what we do. First, look at the points that are different. It's the y's, the 2 and the -5 that are different. Next, find the absolute value of each number. Absolute value of 2 and the absolute value of -5. Absolute value of 2 is 2. Absolute value of -5 is 5. And then we look to see, do we add these or do we subtract them? Well, since one of them is positive and the other's negative, that's a non-matching combination. One's positive, one's negative. That means we add them. Okay? And when you add them, you get 7 miles. In case you're wondering, why do we add them? Why does this mean that we add them if one's positive and one's negative? Here's why. Because look at what's happening. If I start here, and I take my absolute value, 1, 2, that's 2. Then I go here and I take my absolute value, my distance from 0, and that's 5 units. So in order to find this total distance, I need to add the 5 and then the 2 more, and that'll give me 7. So that's why this actually works. Again, if any of this gets confusing, this can be tricky. We need to, everyone needs to practice this, all the students. I get it, but let me know. Call me, email me, ask questions. But let's see the other type of example where you would subtract between them. Okay, let me get these out of the way first, and we'll focus first on the other points. Okay, so here are our points. 3, -3, and 2, -1. We do have a graph here, so let's plot them and count. First point, 3, -3. 3, -3. Then 2, -1. Oops, sorry, that was a bad one. What's wrong with that one is this was supposed to be, I'm sorry, this here was also supposed to be a 3. Please forgive me. Okay? So we had 3, -3, 3, -3, and then we have 3, -1. 3, -1. There it is. And let's count the distance. 1, 2. So here's what we do. We know that they're the distance of 2 units apart. But what if we didn't have the graph? The first step remains the same. First, look to see which are the points that are different between them. Is it the x coordinates that are different? No, these are both +3's. In this example, it's the y's that are different. So we're only going to be looking at these numbers. Okay? Find the absolute value of each one. Absolute value of -3, and then the absolute value of -1. Absolute value of -3 is +3. Absolute value of -1 is +1. But here is the difference. Since these points actually fall in the same quadrant, or the same little square section of the graph, you have to look. If these are both negative or both positive, okay, you actually subtract the absolute values. In the last example, we had one positive, one negative, or this one positive, this one negative, and therefore we added. But if they're both the same sign, such as both negatives or both positives, then we actually subtract the absolute values. So 3 minus 1 gives us 2. Same thing we got here. We're going to do one more example, and that'll be the end to this video. So just give me a second while I erase all this, and I will give us our new and final example. Okay? The very last example is as follows. Four -1, 3 -1. Put them on there. First, 4 -1. Then 3 -1. What is the distance between them? Well, it's just one space or one block or 1 mile, whatever the map or graph is telling you. But let's find it without using the graph. First, look at the ones that are different. In this one, the y points are the same. They're both -1. It's the x points that differ. This one's a 4, this one's a 3. So we must find the absolute value of both of those. Absolute value of 4 and the absolute value of 3. Okay, and I just got those numbers from here, the x points. Okay, absolute value of 4 is 4. Absolute value of 3 is 3. And then I look back at the points that I used. They are both the same sign, both positive numbers. If they're both positive or both negative, you subtract the absolute values. But if, like the first example, if, and I'm flashing back here, you have a negative and a positive, 1 and 1, that's when you add. So when you have a negative and a positive is the only time you add. But, like these examples, if first you look for the ones that are different, in this case it's the x's, the 4 and the 3, if they're both positive or both negative, that's when you subtract the absolute values. So it's literally a matter of looking to see which ones are different. Either the x's are different or the y's are going to be different. Okay? Once you find the ones that are different, which in this case is the x's, take the absolute values of both numbers. Then all you have to do is look. Look at the ones I'm using. Okay? Look at them. Are they both positive or both negative? If they match, either both positive or both negative, you subtract. If one's positive and one's negative, you add. But this one, they're both positive, so we would subtract the absolute value, putting the larger number first so we don't get a negative answer. 4 minus 3 is 1, and there we have it, the distance of 1. Okay? So here, and I'll leave this up here. I hope this is able to be read when this is on the bigger screen. Okay? This basically gives us some examples of each type of problem. Okay? So all you do is, in each one, if you're trying to find the distance between them, first look to see which ones are different. Are the x's different or are the y's different? In this one, it's the front numbers, the x's, that are different. They both have a 2 for the y, but their x coordinates are different. -6 and 3. So you find the absolute value of -6 and 3. Absolute value of -6 is 6. Absolute value of 3 is 3. Then you have to look to see if you add or subtract those absolute values. In this one, you would add the absolute values because the 6 in the original point was a negative, and this one was a positive. You had one negative, one positive. So you'd have to add their absolute values. Okay? Pause this screen if you need. This will be in the student notebooks. Give me a call with any questions you have or an email. Thank you and have a great day.